Hey, you're watching Just Press Record on the Cultish Creative YouTube channel. I'm your host, Matt Ziegler, and on each episode, I invite not one, but two guests to join me for a conversation-style interview. These are smart, funny, usually a little eccentric, frequently a little weird, often very online friends of mine, and even if you don't understand what they have in common at first, just wait, because I've seen some common ground between them that I've been dying to ask them about, and just press record. The show practically named itself, seriously. So subscribe, like, comment below, and stick around at the end of the disclosures, disclaimers, and reminders, and, come find me, cultishcreative.com, at cultishcreative on Twitter, and by name on LinkedIn. Without further adu, throw your seatbelts on. Let's make it a record. Okay, I am pressing record now. This is the Cultish Creative YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, don't forget to hit subscribe down below. I'm your host, Matt Ziegler. I'm so excited to have these two guests here with me today because, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, give a warm round of applause, welcome, whatever you want to call it, to Ben Hunt and Paul Millard. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello, Matt. So great to be here. Really appreciate you doing this.
Now, Ben, everybody I'm sure here knows you from the website and Twitter handle, of course, Epsilon Theory. Ben is basically, if you don't know him, he's like the lone Hunt brother cornering the silver market that is the game theory markets. That's like a 3-person joke. His Greek life, you guys both got it. Okay, good. It's a 3-person joke officially. His Greek life starts at Epsilon Theory, but it goes, now will you get this joke? It goes full lambda, lambda, lambda for the nerds inside of the fraternal order of the Epsilon Theory community. I am a proud pledge. Did either of you get that joke?
Totally. Very good. Well done.
We're going deep Revenge of the Nerds here. And then if you don't know him for Breaking News, which is the YouTube show we run together with our friend Jack Forehand, I'd be criminal not to promote that. So Ben Hunt, break the news, confirm you're here live with us right now.
Great to be here, Matt. Appreciate it.
Paul Millard, Mr. Pathless Path, Mr. Choose Your Own Adventure, nonfiction, self-published adventuring guy, Mr. My Way Less with extra Sinatra vibes, My Way Man. And Paul, I got to say, I'm deeply, if not irrationally concerned that I'm saying your name wrong. So say your name for me first and foremost.
Paul Millard.
All right, this is great. So I wrote down to myself in listening to podcast intros that Millard, and I was really hoping I was right. So I wrote down that I grew up on Miller Street. And so a long time ago, I was OG Millard. And that's what I was telling myself. Shout out to Lamb's podcast who got it right. But then in case I was wrong, I also thought, well, on Miller Street, I also grew up playing a lot of Duck Hunt, which is kind of a dual reference where Ben Hunt is the best hunt since Duck Hunt. And in that game, I got mallards. So for some reason it went there. I was very proud. So Paul, please say hello. And you've confirmed your pronunciation of your name now.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was a fantastic intro. Probably one of my favorite.
I'm going to take it one level deeper now too. Actually, 2 levels deeper. Side conversation for later. Lambda, lambda, lambda. 2006 at UConn University officially became a fraternity. Did you know this?
I did not know that, even though I was there.
That wasn't you though, right?
No, I wasn't a frat guy.
Well, you and me both. So one thing you might relate to, and this might be striking in between the ages here, but 1993, NBA Jam, which is the follow-on to Duck Hunt in my life, basically, Indiana Pacers, Reggie Miller, I got Millard again, and I got to say, best player in the game, I think inarguably, and NBA Jam was all about duos. It was all about the combo, and I think he was partnered with Shrimp, and that was the go-to team for beating all of your friends. And I feel the same way about you two. You're kind of my ultimate non-NBA, but community building jam team. And so I wanted to have this conversation today with you because you guys both run communities. We have the Epsilon Theory community, we have the Pathless Path community, and there's a big effort inside of these things to gather people together in a world that seems to just want to push everybody apart. So thank you for doing this with me. Ben, I'm going to start this episode of Just Press Record by asking you for some terminology.
Sure.
We're going to talk about community. I want you to tell us what these words are when you talk about raccoons and coyotes. And I promise this will make sense to all the listeners who have no clue where I'm going.
Well, this was part of the kind of OG epsilon theory lingo. I've written a lot of notes about life out here on the farm, and one of them was about the coyotes who live here. And they're incredibly smart, much smarter than my dogs. And it's not even close. The problem is that the coyotes around here are actually too smart for their own good. They don't get what we call the game theory. Sorry, these kind of $10 words, the metagame, the game around and encompassing the game you think you're playing. And so the coyotes, they were brilliant at the game they're playing, a territorial game of aggression and response with the dogs in the neighborhood or the housewives in the neighborhood. But they were terrible because they didn't understand the larger game they were playing, which is a game of animal control and human beings not tolerating nature, even when they come out to live in nature. So that's my vision of so many of us in the finance world, generally speaking. And I think it probably includes, Paul's consulting world. I think former consulting world, right? And so many of the worlds of occupation that smart people have. We are, and I describe myself here, I'm a coyote. It's this great Brit expression of being too clever by half. That's a coyote. You're too clever by half. You're focused on this new edge or this new thing you're doing, and you're not seeing the bigger picture. That's a coyote, and like I say, it's a very apt self-description of me. The other denizen of our farm life that I was writing about this note were the raccoons. Raccoons are also clever. They're not nearly as smart as a coyote, but they have no redeeming features. Raccoons are terrible. Raccoons are thieves, murderers. Close to a lot of chickens to raccoons. And they don't kill to eat. They kill for the sport of it. They steal everything, not because they need it, but because that's what they do. They steal everything. They're cute though, right? We know Rocky Raccoon. We've got, the Rocket Raccoon and the kind of a newer version. They've got an opposable thumb. They've got the cute paws. They got the little mask. So they have a good PR associated with them. So in my epsilon theory lingo, raccoons are the grifters, the con men, and almost always they're men, the people who will take advantage of you, especially as coyotes, because that's what they do. They literally can't help themselves, but to help themselves to everything you've got. So it's my lingo for a lot of us in financial services, too clever by half, the coyotes, who play a mean game right there in the moment, but aren't understanding the big picture, and to get ultimately wiped out, often by animal control. And then the raccoons, who never seem to get wiped out by animal control or anybody else, and they're the shysters in our game, even though they're not quite as smart.
So I'm going to stay on the farm for a second, but Paul, I want to take this over to you. So we've got the world of coyotes and raccoons.
Yeah.
I'll let you self-identify if you want to. Then I also kind of think about this pathless path choice of people who choose to be farmers, who choose they're not just going to go to the grocery store, but they're going to do something. And maybe they're one part coyote, one part farmer. Just, do those words mean anything to you? And how do you sort of think of yourself?
Yeah, I'd have to think more about the farmer, but I actually followed up to your and Ben's previous conversation about the raccoon versus coyote, and it really resonated because the raccoons are operating inside of organizations. And I got to see up close in the executive levels of these organizations working in places like New York and the consulting world. They're killers. And I basically quit when I ran up against one of these people and I lost. I was not equipped mentally. Um, and also, it was just sort of a reckoning of like, okay, the system will actually turn me more into that kind of a person. Do I want that?
Yep.
And so I sort of went out on my own. And the interesting thing I've noticed being on my own, and I think the financial advisory space is really fascinating because it's been out as indie sort of operators for a long time, is you see everyone out in the open operating now. You can't hide behind an organization. And no one really cares how you behave inside an organization as long as you're making a lot of money and providing for your family. So there's a lot of status to be had with very minimal cost. But now it's like you just see it all in the open. And there's a very weird incentive when you're out in the open. You sort of like see people acting like this, and you sort of imagine, well, if I don't do those things, I'm going to lose. And the decision I made early on in my path was a conscious choice of, okay, I am going to lose to these people. I don't want to be like that. Um, the problem with this is everyone thinks you're a loser, including your friends, your family, because not going after money or status or these things is seen as a radical act in a place like the US. And so I'm consciously always thinking about, because I sort of stumbled upon creative work that I loved, and writing really is this long game that you can't force. And I think I got lucky with that. And I sort of saw, okay, I can commit to this over the long term, but I still need to do things to support my life. And it's this constant battle between like, how do I make money in a way that feels good to me? Um, Funding my journey to play this long game because I don't want to just try and make as much money from writing as quick as possible. Um, and yeah, that's been a challenge. And for the most part, my way of trying to navigate this has been embracing gift economy stuff. So I do have a community, and last year, 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, I launched it with a $20 a month fee. And it never felt right. I never felt like I delivered on that. I easily could have kept it running. About 2 months ago, I turned off all subscriptions, turned off all paid support on Substack, and went to a one time pay what feels right model. And instantly I felt better. People could pay $25 or up one time, lifetime. I'm feeling better about it. There's more good stuff emerging in the community now. And yeah, I was doing a session this morning. This woman from the Philippines was hosting a Designing Your Life workshop. She had never done anything like this before. And it's like, man, this is so good. This is what I want. I don't want people to have to pay for this. I want to build my life around this. But at the same time, like, I have a family and a kid now, and people think I'm silly and stupid for not maximizing money. Um, so yeah, that's sort of like those were some of my reflections from your initial conversation about all this stuff.
Which is so interesting because it gets into, I think, the scripts of both being inside of the story of work and then the scripts that we try to write ourselves on this, like on whatever journey we're trying to make. I want to pull one thing you said out of that and pass it back to Ben and maybe tie this into scripts, Ben, with this too, the narrative of this all. The idea of choosing to do something, choosing not to be a raccoon, and choosing something that other people's might label as loser. How does that hit you, or unpack the narrative? What's going on there?
So many things to pull out. The first thing I'll say is that the most powerful scripts and stories in our world are the stories we tell ourselves. Right. So what Paul's been able to do, and it's really rare, is you have to be brave enough. There's just no other word for it, right? You've got to be brave enough to tell yourself a different story about who you are and what your identity is. You have to have a sense of self, and a self that fits within a story that you say, I'm the protagonist. And look, our entire world is set up to turn us into NPCs, into non-player characters. Our entire world is set up to do that. And in the world as it is, a world a lot of raccoons inside these large organizations, to play that game successfully, to become a player character, as Paul was saying, you have to become one of them. You have to become what I like to call a high functioning sociopath to succeed, to follow that script. You have to tell yourself a different story. And that's, I think what Paul does so well, and I think that's why he has built a community, and we need to talk more about what community is and what it isn't. I think why he's been so successful at building a community is he's actually helping people find the courage to tell themselves a new story about who they are and how they make their way in the world, not as a player in a sociopathic game, and not as a non-player character who's just buffeted this way and that by the winds of chance, but as an actual autonomous human being, making their own choices, charting their own pathless path, but in a way that fits a story they can tell themselves. If you can do that, the friends come in line, right? Your friends and family, they'll come in line. You've got to be able to tell yourself that story first. That's the really crucial aspect here.
Yeah, it's a very long game too, because I'm a former strategy consultant. I know how to play games. I worked at places like McKinsey. I could see the opportunities.
Sure.
Early on, I started writing in public 2018. I saw, okay, if you lean a little harder with saying these kind of things, you get a bigger audience. I burned out so bad on my path that I was just like, my default script was, I'm going to do the opposite of everything I did before.
The Costanza approach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I basically ended up finding I started feeling better about myself and much more optimistic. And so my path was uncertain, but it felt much more like a real path I could actually follow. And yeah, I think I also coasted off some of I don't know what you would call it. It's sort of like a psychological surplus of 2017 to 2020. There was this sort of magical period where creating online was mostly not raccoons. And so the more raccoons enter a space, I sort of have this woo theory that it sucks the joy out of it. And
I don't think that's a woo theory at all. But continue. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think, there's sort of less alpha to grab and turn into your own joy because other people are grabbing it and turning it into money. That's the woo part of the alpha juice floating in the universe. And I saw this too, think about something like investment banking. You hear all these stories about people doing it in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And some of these people loved finance. If you love finance and you go into investment banking now for more than a few years, the joy will get sucked out of it. It's just a game at this point. The path's so clear, it's so obvious. And so similar things are happening with financial advisory, with the creator economy. As people become more public facing, there's this tragedy of the commons thing, I think, that is happening. And it just makes me sad. I don't have a good approach for it other than retreating to the cozy webs.
Yeah. And look, that's true in the law. It's true in medicine. It's true in all these professions, right? Once you can put a big in front of the name of the profession, big law, big medicine, big finance, then it absolutely takes all the joy out of it. You become you're left with just playing the internal game, which I'm sure you're a game player, Paul. I'm sure you're really good at it. And, I love playing games. And, you lose yourself in it. You lose your sense of, you lose the story you want to tell about yourself.
So Paul, in the sense of building the story that you tell about yourself and then sharing this story. And I'll take it back to that idea of like waking up the NPCs in your community, or waking up people to like notice this thing. You start sharing your story and people start being attracted to you sharing this story about what you did. Is that a fair assessment?
I think what's happening with my book is just far beyond what I ever expected. Is they feel seen,
Mm.
and what there is a lack of in the world right now is compassion and love. And people feel seen. They feel, to be honest, like loved, because that's basically what I channeled into the book, of my own shift from like feeling like a fool after quitting my job to finding a place where I felt good about myself. And so they feel that too. And they have this phrase where they don't feel crazy, and they feel like going after things that are worthwhile to them makes sense. Um, and so a big part of how I think about my community is actually, it's not about me. It's about those people finding the other people. It's all about finding the others. Um, and so that's mostly what I focus on. Yeah, I don't really make money running the community. I don't know if I ever will, but it felt like it chose me. There were enough people that were like, "Hey, can you start a group or something? I want to meet other people thinking about these questions." And that is one principle I've had, is like, wait till I'm chosen to do something, rather than like, how do I go capture the $100,000 community opportunity? Doesn't make sense to me.
The fascinating part of that is there's a raccoon aspect of niching down or finding the niche and like forcing that out there and using the net to catch them. Then there's the coyote aspect of sort of like stepping back and finding your pack amongst these things.
Well, that niche existed. It would have been much.
Oh, it
So
did.
I understood. So here's the game I could have played to become richer and more famous. I could have followed the like Simon Sinek or like Adam Grant or playbook like that right after the corporate world, and um become like a thought leader to the corporate world and get paid by companies to talk about that. Um, didn't feel true to me. And I felt like something was missing from the conversation. And I had to follow that instead. But it was a terrible financial decision.
Hmm. Congratulations.
Yeah,
As a
right.
finance person.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a bad decision, but we're so happy you did it. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
First of all, let me say, I think it was probably a bad decision in a
Short term.
myopic way, but you've been talking, Paul, about the long game, which is what this is, and what
Yeah.
you've done. And I think what all should try to do is to be, I'll use this, it's not quite as overused as thought leader, but this word, authentic. And when you're by authenticity, I mean that the story you're telling yourself, the story you're telling the world, are in sync, right? They're not, because if they're out of sync, if you're telling yourself the story, okay, this is the way I am instrumentally going to make it. And out there, you're saying, oh, we need to, join this community and help each other. You're out of sync. It shows. People can smell it a mile off. And why this is important is that in our world today, and we talk about, again, what that means, the coin of the realm is authenticity. It's not access. It's not some sort of attainment. It's none of those things that used to be the coin of the realm. It's authenticity. So I'm certain that in the long run, this is going to work for you in every way. You'll have the benefit of it being intrinsically rewarding along the way, which is, I just want to come back to one thing though, Paul, what you were talking about how people are grateful, or what drives the formation of a community around this solution you're chosen. The similarity in experience I had is that I don't travel as much today as I used to. I used to travel a lot. I still travel a good bit, all over the world. And wherever I would go, everywhere in the world, every place in the United States. And this is not just, urban areas. This is where this, I really mean everywhere. You will find men and women of goodwill doing small acts of kindness and service everywhere in the world, without exception. And also without exception, when you talk to these men and women doing small acts of service and goodwill, they think it doesn't matter. They think it doesn't matter. The story, I believe, that drives all of this, our system of raccoonery, is that
great.
we have been told from birth that what matters is not our individual acts of goodwill and service, what I like to call making, protecting, and teaching, that doesn't matter. That what matters is what you do in service to a corporation or to a political party. That's what matters. And it's the most frustrating thing when I talk to my kids' friends. They say, okay, well, I want to matter. I want to make a difference. And the path to mattering and making a difference is, well, I'm going to go work for, this political campaign, or I'm going to go work for this company or this organization. And that's a lie. That's just a lie. What matters are those small acts of kindness and service. And it requires someone like you, Paul, in your way, like I try to do as well, is to stand up and say, no, this is what matters. And if you get people to say, oh, it is, then it is like scales falling from eyes, right? It is like, well, yes, I am a human being because of these small acts of kindness. This is what matters, not my service to a political party or a corporation.
Ben, keep us here for one moment and how do you define community? What does that word mean? And if you want to explain it in the negative, you can do that too.
No, I'll explain it in a positive. A community to me is a group of people who do not treat each other instrumentally. That's it. Period. End of story. You are not treated instrumentally. You are treated as an autonomous human being in and of yourself.
Yeah,
I'm really serious. That's it.
Paul, add or...
Yeah, I love that definition. I think it's something I'm thinking a lot. It's a very open question for me. My daughter is 1, and I think that question of what is a community and how does that fit into my life is going to shape the next chapter of my life. And to be honest, I don't have a good answer for it. But it's a question I take serious. And I think that is sort of the element of all the things we're talking about, is like find questions that you can actually take seriously. And that's sort of like how you can matter. Um, I feel so lucky. I've probably received hundreds of messages of thank you for like writing my book. And so I have like more appreciation than I need. And I just think a lot about like, how can I help others experience that feeling? And honestly, just keep going on my path and staying true to the questions that matter to me can be a way of doing that. And I took inspiration from someone like Ben early on my path. He's talking about make, protect, teach. And it's like, finally, someone said it. And then you can watch people over the long term, how they behave. He attracts good people around him. He has his daughter running a podcast with him. It's like, he's like, seems like a happy and like living a good life. And it's like, okay, like that's good evidence. And like, that's what we actually need to look for. But we're flooded with people who are not good role models. And to be honest, the answer is not to compete with them. It's to have let 1,000 smaller groups flourish.
Paul, how do you think about that? And specific, because like you saw the corporate path, we've all seen the political path. So you're actually talking about smaller communities where other people can rise to lead or rise to be a part of it, where they feel like they can make that difference, like specifically seeking that out.
The crazy thing I've realized is I just sit with people and I can tell the work that they're doing matters to them. And it's so easy for me to just say, yeah, it does matter. And they've never had anyone tell themselves that in their entire
Right.
life. And it's heartbreaking for me. So many people have all these interests and curiosities and things they care about. And everyone is so deeply, like, I love the raccoonness, systemic raccoonness. Like, people are really programmed in this. And that is really the deeper message of what I'm saying. I don't care about the corporate world. I don't care if it's good or bad. But it's a place where that message thrives, that money and status and power is the ultimate aim of life. We all know it's not true.
Can I jump in here on this, Matt?
Please.
Because I there's another, I think, look, I appreciate, first of all, let me say, I appreciate what Paul was saying about the role model bit. I don't think of myself as a particularly wise person. I do think there's wisdom in the words, right? Whether it's, so my words, Paul's words, the old stories, there's a lot of wisdom in the words. And I was thinking about that because one of the things that I think I was able to see and then write about was what you're talking about, Paul, about whether it's the corporate world, whether it's our system of schools, whether it's our system of food, all of these systems that we've built. I like to call them industrially necessary because I actually believe, I'll pick on food for a little bit, right? Eggs was the first example I had on it. So eggs. Eggs are available to us through an industrial system. It's the industrial production of eggs, where the animal, the chicken, the egg layer is kept in a little bitty cage, right? And in what we would objectively call, oh my God, that's an awful conditions and situation. It is necessary if we are to provide eggs, and this is true for the entire protein complex. Chicken is meat, pork, beef. If we are able to, if we want to provide protein to this nation of 350 million people, to a world of 8 billion plus people, these systems that we have are industrially necessary. I get it. I really do.
Yeah.
What I can't abide, though, is then the story that comes up around that. It's one thing to say, look, these eggs here in the grocery store, they're, spotlessly clean and they're kept refrigerated. What I can't stand is for people to say, that's the good egg. That's the good egg. Because it's not. They're washed and they're refrigerated because otherwise the bacteria and disease that lives in these protein factories would be devastating. You couldn't provide the protein. So the eggs we get at the supermarket, they're not the good egg. They're an industrially necessary egg. And what really bugs me is whether we're talking about work, whether we're talking about school, whether we're talking about food, whether we're talking about anything we do in our lives, when what is industrially necessary is sold to us as the good. And that's what I thought your book was so great about, Paul, was about saying, like, hey, just like you said, I don't care about the corporate world. Just don't tell me that's the
Right.
best of all possible worlds. That's the right path. It's the industrially necessary path.
I think we're in a weird time too, where like the possibilities are changing. Like you say, it's just industrially preferable now. It's not necessary anymore. It is easier than ever to make money as a self-employed person. Like, it's just true. And people don't like that that's true. They want
Yep.
They want people doing their own thing to be like, oh, that's a privileged thing to do. It's like, it's easier for everyone. And I meet people from all around the world doing this. It's better for people outside of the rich Western countries, to be honest. And yeah, it's really hard to escape that. And my own journey is, I thought I was I use the word loser because I really thought like, okay, I'm a failure. I threw out this impressive career. I'm going to start over. My friend, I think you both know him, Chris Abdel Mesa, was on a call with me like 3 years ago, and he's like, "You're like the most ambitious person I've met." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" I'm like sacrificing everything to write, and we want to have kids, and like, no, he's like, "No, you're just doing what you're meant to be doing," and I'm like, "Oh shit, that is ambition." And yeah, that's sort of like what I'm trying to write about in my next book too.
Ben, what do you think the role of ambition is inside of this? When you break off of that path, what's the role of ambition up against the rejecting the industrial necessary or looking at the other thing?
Man, I'm a coyote. Of course I'm ambitious, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way we are. I can't help myself. And I know you're the same way. I suspect Paul's the same way.
Yeah.
We're entrepreneurial at heart. We're always seeing the game that's being played, a way to play it better. We can't help ourselves, right? This is how we're wired. This is how we're wired. Now, I don't want to say the problem with that. The flip side of that is that ego is a big part of that. It's who I am. It's what I mean when I say coyotes, they're too clever by half. I'm too clever by half. And it gets me in trouble all the time. All the time. What's important is to find partners, friends, mates who balance that around, right? I can't overemphasize how important that is, because our system of raccoons is designed, I'll use a Marxist term here because Marx was right about this, it's designed to alienate us. And what alienation means is to separate us. Everything about our world is designed to separate us, to atomize us, to say, you're a big, strong man there standing by yourself, when in truth, they're treating you as another player character. So it's who I am. It's who I think all of us are here on this call. We are creatures of ego and ambition and strategy and gameplay. That's how we're wired. What's crucial so that the ego doesn't whisper in our ear and tell us, oh, you're playing with the big boys now in their game. You can win on their turf. You got to find other human beings, right, who don't treat you instrumentally. This is what I mean about a community. It's a group of people don't treat each other instrumentally. They treat each other not as a means. What does instrumental mean? It means you're not being treated as a means to an end. You're an autonomous end in yourself. And whether your community is your family, whether your community is a group of friends, whether your community is a much larger group, an epistemic community, I like to describe it like an epsilon theory or what Paul's created. There are people who are not treating you as a means to an end, but are treating you as an autonomous human being yourself. That's the group you have to find to keep the ego from turning ambition into I'm mixing a ton of metaphors here, into the slippery slope that gets you back into the world of raccoons. I think they have at least 5 mixed metaphors, but you get what I mean.
We're here, if nothing else, but to mix metaphors. Paul, how does this strike you then? This idea of coyotes and sort of like making the overconfident mistakes of experimenting and trying new things, of getting a little bit lost, of getting shot at by the farmer's wife with the shotgun here on this. it kind of feels like those mistakes of exploring these alternate paths are kind of what puts the communities together. Like that's what you're finding, right? You're finding these people who are willing to experiment with this thing. And once they feel validated, finding that in each other.
Yeah, I think so. And I also, yeah, I try not to glorify this stuff or think I'm like some noble crusader. Or the thing I really do is I just try to avoid identities or labels,
Mm.
right? You see this with authors. Oh, I'm a published author.
Yes. Yes, you do. Oh my God. Yeah.
I reject that term out of hand. I'm somebody that enjoys writing and I want to keep writing for a long time. Because published author or community leader or brand builder or podcaster, all these terms come with their own stories. And so it's really just trying to stay humble. I think honestly, having a kid is a life hack for this. They just keep you really humble. My daughter has different needs every day, and that's really just keeps me pretty grounded. Um, yeah, and I don't know if we're doing anything that noble digitally. I think the real magic is the offline stuff and what people actually go do in their world, how they are to their families, where they're finding places to contribute and things like that. But yeah, I'm just trying to do my best.
Well, speak a little bit about this because, Ben, I know you think about this. Doing things offline, doing things outside of any common script of identity, any story of identity. This is stuff that doesn't scale. And it's kind of the magic of getting people to care again about stuff that just doesn't scale, that doesn't have to be the next Microsoft or Airbnb or something. Just, hey, you did something cool, like Paul spending time with his child. What's the magic of not scaling?
So the trick I found with not scaling is to find a venue for doing things that don't scale, but still satisfy my coyoteness, my ambition, my game playing, my problem solving. And what I mean by that is, again, that's who I am. That is my identity. That's how I'm wired. Does that mean I'll play online chess all day or or go to the park and just play, speed chess all day? Maybe, right? Maybe that, and I could get into that, or I could go play,
Go play poker, Ben. We know you
go
want
play
to.
poker, right? Yeah, exactly. Which is what you find with a lot of guys. They're always guys of a certain age who've been in finance. Well, they go up to Foxwoods. That's their thing. They think they're playing the game. That's how they satisfy this. And I had this experience where I was able to help set up a group of family and friends to really do a grassroots securing of good quality masks back when there weren't many, and get them right into the hands of the doctors and the nurses and the EMTs and the fire and the police who needed them. And it was that experience. I would call it pop-up philanthropy. You talk about pop-up restaurants. I would call it pop-up philanthropy, where it wasn't creating an organization that would go on and raise lots of money and then go do something else. It was like, no, here's a problem to solve. And I love the problem solving aspect of it. There was a discreteness to it. ETE, not EET, not secretiveness to it, but a finiteness to it. And it was small, but it wasn't that small. Its impact on real people was enormous. And I found it so intrinsically rewarding. I found it such a wonderful way to challenge to satisfy both challenging and satisfied by inner coyotiness and entrepreneurialism, which is a bug, not a feature. And it's finding other opportunities like that that are how I'm trying to channel it. Right. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's also just it's like Ben is saying, is just paying attention to where you can help. And I just feel really early. Honestly, I'm 7 years into this path. I feel like it's taken me 7 years to gain more confidence in myself, become more capable of a person, and start to really shift to that next phase of the journey. I don't know what that looks like. Um, but I sort of have like anchors. Like I do want to teach and mentor people. Um, I do want to continue to write. And so with those in mind, I'm looking for opportunities. Where can I do that in a positive way? To express my coyotiness, like the self-publishing is a beautiful
Yeah.
game for me
Yes,
because
exactly. Yep.
because it's so fun because I'm an underdog. I'm punching up. I'm making money from it, and I know people like the book.
Yep.
Plus, I can commit to keep writing, and writing is this thing like it's you can't force it. You have to really honor the act of creativity, and it's a long game. And so that is like that's like the core for me now. It just cracks me up so much, like how broken the traditional publishing world is, and like self-publishing is totally fine, and it works, and it's great, and it helps pay for my life. Um, but yeah, I think for me, like I'd actually be curious about you guys, like how you think about life with kids. Because that I think is the biggest question for me is like, how do I get in communities where other people do want to active service and build things together and do it around kids and do it in a positive way? Because that's kind of scary for me. I don't know. I don't have answers for that yet.
Father Ben, do you want to weigh in on
And I'll go right
homeschooling?
in on this.
Do you have kids
Yeah.
too, Matt?
I do not, but
I
Ben
thought you
is-
had kids. Maybe it was Jack.
You
There
just
you
got
go.
married, man. So yeah, it was.
We'll
got
get
time.
there, Matt.
We're getting there. We're trying.
It is a life changing. I mean, that's a trite thing to say, but I'll tell you the specific thing that changed for me, Paul, when we had our first child was I stopped being embarrassed.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's great.
Now you have other
It-
people to
Stopped
be
being
embarrassed. They can be embarrassed. You don't have to anymore.
Yeah, I stopped being embarrassed because I didn't give a damn anymore. I've got.
Yeah. It's
You
so
can
true.
look down the family tree and say, this is what matters. This is what matters. And so what if anyway, I stopped being embarrassed. And that is so liberating. It's so wonderful. So wonderful. Now, my kids range in age from 27 to 19, 4 daughters, 4 girls. And they're all adults, right? Even the 19-year-old who's 19 going on 29, basically. So we're at that transition phase where your children, you hope, and I do hope, and this is become your friends. It's a different relationship. There's never an end to the parental relationship. And I'm going to come back to the community part because it's going to link to this. And I have to give credit to my wife around this, is that I think your goal should be, as you raise your children, not to be the hub of the wheel, where your children are like spokes from you being the hub, where everything, all the relationships, where it all has to flow through you. That's a trap. That's a real trap. What I think you want to be, Paul, and Matt, this ever applies, right, is you want to be you want your children to have the direct relationship, right? You want to be above and below and behind and in front of the wheel. You don't want to be the hub, because you want your children to form a community of their own. I think it's so crucial. Of course, it's a community with you too, but you don't want to constrain it to their world being mommy and daddy at the hub of the wheel, and they're just spokes on the wheel. So that's I'd say that for one. For two, I'd say, and again, my wife gets the credit for this because I'll say we, and it's truly the royal we. But with our older two, they were going into middle school, and middle school is never a good time, I think, for anyone. I mean, boy or girl, but I think especially for girls. And it's just an awful time. And my wife wanted to play a more active role in our children's education. That's when we started homeschooling. So we started, I guess, 6th and 7th grades for 2 older one. They're pretty close together. And then as soon as we started doing that, the younger two, as soon as they wanted in on the homeschooling.
Yeah.
So I guess it was 3rd grade starting for number 3. And the last one is what we call in homeschooling circles a feral child, right? She never went to organized school. Because the gift that you're giving your children, if you can homeschool, not everyone can. I get that. We have this is a luxury. The luxury that we're able to give, the benefit we're able to give our children was the gift of time. Because you're no longer on the schedule of the industrially necessary school, which I love. I have great relationships with our schools, and the teachers, they're wonderful. I've got no beef against the schools, the public schools. By the luxury, the gift you want to give your children, though, is the gift of time, the gift of being there as they form their own community, find their own pack with themselves and with others, where you're not the hub of that wheel. If you can do those two things, and it doesn't have to be through homeschooling, it is through making that active decision not to be the center of their world, especially as they grow older, and to play this active role where you're giving them the gift of time. You will find like-minded families everywhere. Most teachers, even a lot of administrators in the public schools, they're on your side with this. They're absolutely on your side with this. So it's finding those like-minded parents, because that's a community. And that's how we did the homeschooling. Homeschooling is a community. It's not doing it on your own. It's a movable feast where every year, this is the challenge of it, every year you've got to find that consortium, right? We want to use a business term about this, right? You want to form that group of parents where you pool your resources, and you hire the retired chemistry teacher, where you rent out space at the local library to have your classes. It's not unschooling, which is the whole thing. If you get into this kind of literature, it's school, it's education, and you're doing it as part of a community of like-minded parents. Those like-minded parents also exist in the structured school system, the industrial necessary schools. You can absolutely find them. I just find it's more difficult in the structured system than in a pathless system of raising your children.
All of that. Yeah.
Paul, are you thinking about homeschooling? You don't have to predict the future on this. I know you got a few years till you decide.
I really just think from first principles in terms of what's best for my kids. I don't think as soon as I had a kid, you just realize being dogmatic about what you're going to do with your kids is kind of silly. And every kid's different, right? Every kid has different needs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the hard thing I'm finding is with our generation, it's very built around two full-time careers.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then families who hire nannies, you can't really interface with them because they see childcare as something you outsource, right? So they're not going to watch your kids. You're not going to get in any sort of like more non-monetary relationship. And so, yeah, that's been a difficult thing is some of the people I know with kids are more well off, and it's just a different approach to life. But yeah, my wife and I are mostly just watching our daughter. I do 2 days a week. She does 3 days a week, and we're both working on books. And we just need to find other people that want to build a
Yep.
life around that kind of approach.
Well, I'm sure when
They're absolutely there.
Yeah,
I'm sh-
we'll find them too. And it's just like the first year of life, you're not really interfacing with other people with kids.
With any guy, exactly. That first
Yeah.
year with you, I mean, you are the hub of everything, right? By
That's true.
necessity.
Yeah,
And
you are.
so,
Yeah, you're definitely the hub in the first year.
nothing. You shouldn't even think about schooling, right, or education. So your
Well,
kids are
that's
6 years
that's
old.
the
Let 'em
crazy
play.
thing.
Play. Just play.
I have a 3-month-old, and people are like, "What do you think about school?" Like, literally, I'm thinking about formula, poop consistency, diaper size,
Sleep.
diaper sizes. Like these, I don't know. For me, like I just don't worry about these questions until later. And you can
But-
eventually talk to your child too and ask them what they think too.
my chef brother will regularly say, because people are like, "Oh, you must be making these like fantastic things." Like they have a soon-to-be 1-year-old. He's like, "No, my job is calories." Like literally, my
Yeah.
entire chef job boils down to calorie intake. That is my only responsibility.
It's so true. Yeah. I mean, I only have one, and it's like, yeah, as soon as you have kids, you just face a reality. I was talking with somebody the other day at the gym, and he had all these beliefs about trad, and he was just rambling on and on and on and on and on. He's like, "Well, what do you think?" I'm like, "Well, I have a kid," and to sort of just try to stay in touch with reality. I don't really have an ideology.
Well, if there's nothing else, I think that letting go of ideology is the core of this. And if it's all right with you guys, I've got some notes. I'm going to summarize this up before we tell the people where to find you here. We started talking about this and the raccoons and coyotes. Revisit that as many times you need to, but just this reality that the system will make a grifter out of you. The system will make a raccoon out of you if you let it. But letting it is a choice that we all get to make. Ben, you said it, and I know I'm sure this comes from somewhere else too, but the most powerful story is the one we tell ourselves over and over again. Because if we go by the other stories that people tell us, if we go by being NPCs, then we're just participating in it. I keep thinking back to my bad duck hunt joke at the beginning. That's the friggin' dog laughing at you. I'm playing the game that as the levels increase, I just can't win anymore. And my reward is to get taunted by a dog I can't even shoot. And that is cruel and unusual. We talked about anytime an industry grows up where you can put big in front of the title, big law, big medicine, big finance, it's a game to win. If you're a pathless path person or someone who this appeals to, and there's big in front of your industry, you got to get out there and do that. Paul, I love the sentiment of community building you shared about helping others to find the others. I think that is a profoundly beautiful statement of just being at whatever level. If all you're doing is helping the others find their others, that is absolute magic. We touched on authenticity. We touched on this finding the questions of Paul, you said it. Find the question that you can't take seriously. And that's how you matter. And I think of that as the action of being serious, of being truthful, of being true to yourself as the most important thing. Ben, and this is, I believe I wrote, this is the gospel of Ben in the book of Paul, because I know, Paul, you mentioned this in your book about the parable of the industrial necessary egg. I think that's what we're doing here. And industrial necessary is just things that scale, and don't conflate scale with good. That is simple as that. Small can be okay. Small can be beautiful. We talked about having a coyote heart. And I said in my notes here, a coyote heart, kind of like Coyote Ugly, but no, this is Coyote Beautiful. We're flipping that movie on its head. A community of fools who protect each other, but also choose to support each other, which might have even been what Coyote Ugly was about. Did the bartenders all get along? I don't know if I remember. We want to find that stuff that doesn't scale, but still satisfies our coyote-ness. I'm looking off to the screen here. Our friend Dave making these zines. These are beautiful acts of coyote-ness in the wild that are around us. Paul, you said to notice wherever that you can help, and you don't have to know, but finding those anchors. I love this concept of anchors, this teach, mentor, write, self-publish. I noted that your version, Paul's version of Punch Up is basically punting penguin publishers. So I think is a fantastic thing. If we could turn that into a graphic, I'm into that. Ben on kids, stop being embarrassed. Man, if there's nothing else, rejecting the scripts it's just stop being embarrassed about them. Who cares? Let them label you a loser. Learn to love the dog who's taunting you in duck hunt. Because the goal here is this idea of raising a coyote pack. The ultimate small community is family. And there's like-minded families everywhere. I don't know if it gets more perfect than that. There's families everywhere. That's the ultimate small community. We're friggin' surrounded by them. Ben, tell the people where to find you.
You're a modern poet, Matt.
You really are. You're so good. You're so good at this. I'm Epsilon Theory everywhere. Twitter, epsilontheory.com. That's where to find me.
Paul, where can the people find you?
Yeah, pmillard.com or pathlesspath.com. Yeah. Thank you. This is such a fun convo. Thank you so much, Matt.
I'm so happy you could join me. This is Just Press Record. You're watching the Cultish Creative YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, all the things below. Check out Ben, check out Paul. They're both wonderful people, as you can see by this conversation. And come back next time.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for joining us. Like, comment, and hey, subscribe below to Cultish Creative on YouTube if you haven't already. As the good compliance people want me to remind you, Matt Ziegler, that's me, is a managing director at Sunpoint Investments. The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sunpoint Investments. No information on this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of clients of Sunpoint Investments. I hope you've been entertained. I hope you found this useful. I hope you talk to a professional before you try any of this stuff at home. And most of all, I hope you've subscribed. Be nice to each other out there. And don't forget, head over to cultishcreative.com and let's make curiosity a habit together. And I'm out.